So the next area we are going to talk about some of the monitoring commands on the container, right? So when you're working with containers, you need to uh, do some monitoring, or you need to do some troubleshooting on the container. What are all the monitoring commands available? Okay. So, so the first command I'm going to do is, so if I want to read the logs of a container, let's say I told you for every container, I need a running process, right? So that container's health is mapped to the running process health. So based on the running process only, the container health will be decided, and that's why we are starting Apache in the foreground. Okay. And whenever you are writing microservice application, you should always write the logs in the standard output. That is one of the best practices in the containers. Okay. So as I told you earlier, containers are not designed to store any data. So if you write the log in a log file, when the container goes down, the log will be lost and you will not be able to troubleshoot anything. So that's why what people will do, the application will be writing the logs in the standard output. And from there, we will have some additional systems which will be reading the logs and storing it in a centralized location. Okay. So there are utilities like EFK, Elasticsearch, Fluentd, and Kibana, which will be help us to collect the logs from the containers, and then it will stored in a centralized Elasticsearch environment. Okay. So that is on the higher picture, but imagine there is a container running. I want to see what is happening inside the container. So how do I get the logs of a container? So the command is, so I have a running container with the name Jenkins. So let's do that. Docker logs the container name or container ID. So if you see that, this is the Jenkins log which is getting printed. Okay. If you want to see the container logs, the command is docker logs the container name or the container ID. In the logs, there is one more option called -f. That means if you want to follow the logs. So imagine you are doing some troubleshooting. You want to see the real-time logs in the follow mode. Then you can use the logs -f. So this will be keep on printing. If I do some actions in my Jenkins, I can see the log is getting updated. So the option is docker logs -f Jenkins. Let me do one thing. Let me go to the Jenkins. And let me try to install a plugin. It is missing some of the important plugins. That's okay. Logs. Yeah, you can see the logs are getting updated. So if I want to come out of it, press Ctrl C. If you want to see the real-time logs, use the -f option. So the next command or next monitoring command we want to talk about is called Docker top container ID. So Docker top. So I have the container called Jenkins. So this is going to list all the process running inside the container. So in Linux, we have a command called ps-aef, right? Which will list all the process running inside the machine. So the Docker top command will list all the processes running inside the container. So if you see, there are two processes running inside the container. So one is jenkins.var. This is my Jenkins application. And another one is jenkins.sh, which is basically starting my jenkins.var. Which is similar to the Apache scenario. In Apache, we have created a shell script which will start the Apache, right? Like this way, they have a shell script which will start the Jenkins var file. So these are all the two processes running inside the container. So the next command we are going to talk about is called Docker stat. Docker stats container ID or the container name. So this command is going to give you the real-time statistics of the container. You can see the screen is kind of refreshing every minute. So it is just printing the real-time statistics of the container. So what are the parameters it's providing? So it's providing the container ID and name of the container and what is the current CPU utilization of the container and what is the current memory usage of the container and what is the memory usage percentage and network input output usage and block input output for the storage. So these are all the key parameters which you normally monitor on every machines. So CPU, memory, network, and then storage. Okay. And one thing I want to highlight here, you see this machine is having almost 1 GB of memory. The complete memory is allocated to Docker. And the same way, the complete CPU is getting allocated to the Docker. Okay. So whenever I run a container, if you don't explicitly mention, okay, so this is the maximum CPU my container can use, or this is the maximum memory my container can use. So Docker container will think that I have the complete CPU and memory available for me. So it will work in that fashion. So the default behavior of Docker is whatever may be the host machine CPU and memory, the same will be allocated for the container. Okay. If you want to restrict it, you can restrict it. That we will do it on the. So to come out of it, you can press Ctrl C.